We've taken a look at a number of Marvel adaptations that have played fast and loose with how they adapted characters from the comics. But let's try something a little different here. Let's take a look at an MCU project that made virtually no attempt whatsoever to actually adapt either the characters, plot, world building, or even spirit of the comics into the MCU, and just blatantly stole its title to sell what's basically fan fiction to all of us: Marvel Zombies. Now, there are those of you who will call this completely pointless, and you're absolutely right, since the show and comics share very few similarities. However, for fans of the original series, the fact that they didn't use it as at least a template for the show is infuriating. And for others, it's always interesting to see how the comics are different, and if it would have been better or worse if they'd actually cared about the source material as much as fans of it do. So, in that spirit, and just for the hell of it, let's reload the double-barreled 3C system to blast our way through all the zombies and non-zombies adapted from the comic book source material into the shows that make up this universe, to see which characters were, likely inadvertently, adapted the best, and which ones were the absolute worst. For those of you just joining us, those 3Cs are, of course, costume, character, and continuity. Costume rates a character's outfit or costume, their overall look, and their superficial physical characteristics. Character rates their personality, their relationship with others, and their powers or abilities. And continuity rates their origin story, their iconic moments, and their overall place in the world, universe, or timeline. However, these 3Cs will be presented for the first time ever in Zombie Vision. As this isn't ranking how well or poorly the actual superheroes themselves are adapted from the comics, but how well the post-zombie apocalypse versions of them have been adapted. So, costume will be specifically post-zombification alterations to costumes, or lack thereof. Physical characteristics will be missing limbs and other zombie body horror modifications. And origin will specifically be how characters became zombies and/or how their lives change after the zombie apocalypse. Using this system, I've rated everyone who has a counterpart in the original Marvel Zombies comic continuity, as well as a little bit from the later alternate universe versions, when applicable, in both the Marvel Zombies show as well as its precursor, What If Zombies, and then ranked them from the absolute worst adapted to what we'll call, I guess, the best. To see if the MCU made the right call by doing its own thing here, or if the show would have been better had it, actually given a shit about what it was stealing its friggin' name from. Alright, so let's get started with the character ranked as the worst adapted character from the comics into the MCU Marvel Zombies universe, and number 28, Shang-Chi. In the show, Shang-Chi is bit in the initial outbreak, but is able to keep the infection from spreading up his arm due to his father sacrificing himself to give Shang-Chi the 10 rings. He survives the apocalyptic wasteland for 5 years alongside other survivors before teaming up with a new batch of survivors to attempt to find a way to cure the zombie outbreak. In the original comics, we see Shang-Chi as a member of the Resistance pulled together by Nick Fury soon after the scope of the zombie apocalypse is made clear. We don't see how or by who, but he is infected while trying to fight zombies. Now, since the 10 rings thing is completely made up for the MCU, and since the virus in the comics is much, much more powerful, he is turned into a zombie and we see him in the background of multiple shots helping to chase down humans and fight other heroes. When the Ultimate Universe version of the Fantastic Four appear in the zombie universe, we see Ultimate Thing punch him out in one scene, and soon after, he is apparently killed while pursuing Magneto. All of his shots in the comic are as a background character, so fans can pretty much just say, oh, hey, cool, look, it's Shang-Chi. This is an interesting one to start with, because it's not really so much about how he compares to the specific comic, since it doesn't really matter that much for him since he was such a small character in it, but the weird level of importance the MCU gives Shang-Chi, despite how relatively small of a character he actually is to the overall entire Marvel comic universe, leading to him being an incredibly minor character within those comics. Up to 27, we've got Baron Zemo. Now, unlike Shang-Chi, Zemo is a pretty big character in comics. Just not so much in this comic. We see him as a zombie leading a zombified version of the Thunderbolts against Thor. While most of the zombies don't seem to care when their allies are killed, when Zombie Meteorite is killed, Zemo yells out her name. While we see Songbird, Penance, and Jolt all killed, we don't see what happens to Zemo, with this lineup continuing the thread of which characters go by which identities and wear which costumes being quite random as hell compared to the Marvel Universe that we know and love. In the MCU, Zemo has no association whatsoever with the Thunderbolts, who are completely different anyway, so he's used very differently. Instead, he has taken control of the Raft prison and is using it as a submarine to house and transport those able to bring him sufficiently valuable offerings, as we see Shang-Chi do with some cows. While transporting through the ocean, he is willing to offer up heroes to Atlantean zombies for safe passage for the rest of his crew. But when things go south, he travels with Shang-Chi's crew until he eventually has his heart ripped out later on. What was cool about his appearance in the comics was having his mask ripped over his mouth. In the show, not only do they not give us his mask, even though it was introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but he dies instead of becoming a zombie, completely taking this cool imagery away from us. At 26, we come to Scott Lang. In the comics, in the background, we see Scott Lang as a zombie in a couple of scenes. We never have it actually confirmed officially that he's Scott, but he's wearing the helmet and riding on ants, while Hank is only ever seen in his Giant Man persona at the same time. Though, since later we see somebody in a crowd shot in a Yellow Jacket costume as well, and this is another universe, you could make an argument otherwise if you wanted to be a pedantic asshole. Anyways, none of that matters. What matters is that in the comics he's a random background zombie, while since in the MCU he's one of our main characters, he gets a more prominent role. That role is getting attacked and bitten by zombies, being apparently cured by Vision and the Mind Stone off-screen, and becoming a head in a jar who eventually starts getting carried around by Doctor Strange's cloak. This may seem totally random, but it's actually kind of a reference to the comics, as in them both Wasp and Hawkeye are zombies who have their heads ripped off and eventually wind up with those heads in jars. Oh, we'll get to more on that later. The whole point of the head in jar thing in comics was that it just kind of made sense since we've seen both of them get decapitated early in the story, and then recovered later on. While with Scott in the show, we saw him get ripped to shreds by zombies and never saw him again until he was just a head in a jar. They don't explain most of this in the show, so the reason he's like this is just that they stole the imagery from the comics without any of the context. The only reason he's any higher than Shang-Chi here is that in both the comics and show, he was zombified at least for a second, even if it was off-screen. Anyways, now up to 25 with Groot. In the original Marvel Zombies comic, Groot had not become as mainstream in comics or the movies as he is nowadays, so he doesn't actually make an appearance in it. In a more recent reboot of the Marvel Zombies IP, though, a zombified Groot is found within the corpse of Galactus out in space. It attacks the heroes investigating, and that's about it. We don't really see him again. In the show, for God knows what reason, they decided they didn't want a zombified Groot, even though that would have been awesome, and just had him be immediately disintegrated when appearing alongside Thor and Rocket to face a zombified Thanos. Well, see a zombie Groot merchandising potential. At 24, we have Hulk. Zombie Hulk in the comics is one of the main zombies that we follow. Hulk declares himself the hungriest there is, and is as dangerous and deadly as a zombie as he was before. However, likely due to rotting away, he does seem weaker than he'd normally be, as the Ultimate Universe thing is able to easily punch him out while escaping the zombies' world. When his hunger is satiated, he transforms back into Bruce Banner, still a zombie but with the massive flesh he'd eaten remaining the same size within him and ripping Banner's stomach lining straight open. As a scientist, Banner is one of the zombies most thoughtful of the illogic of their need to feed, realizing that they're not digesting any of what they eat, and noticing that when flesh Hulk had eaten falls out of Banner's torn open stomach, if Banner eats it when the hunger returns, it will again satiate the need to feed and stop him from turning into the Hulk, as he does when he needs to maintain his focus while helping to build a machine to injure Galactus. When the hunger returns, he transforms back into the Hulk to feed, and all rationality disappears. After consuming nearly every human on the entire planet alongside other zombies, and then consuming both Silver Surfer and Galactus, Hulk and the others gain the power cosmic and travel the universe, consuming nearly every species and being in it within 40 years. When returning to Earth, some of the other zombies begin to realize that the longer they go without eating, the more the hunger subsides, and upon finding a small band of humans still alive on Earth, fight their cravings and attempt to redeem themselves to save them. Though Banner tries to fight it as well, Hulk cannot withhold his hunger and begins killing those survivors. And upon turning back to Banner, Banner pleads for the others to kill him before he gets hungry and transforms again, to which they quickly do. While Hulk is quite savage and violent when angry, trying to eat other zombies when hungry or outright killing ones who annoy him, he forms a bond with the other main zombies in their travels, willing to share food with them and considering them his friends, leading to him feeling confused and betrayed when they try to stop him from feeding much later on. Now, I think most people would agree a zombie Hulk is awesome, and you definitely want one of those in your Marvel Zombies. And in the comics, he's one of the most interesting zombies due to still changing back to Banner, his immense level of danger to all humans, and his childish inability to restrain his impulses. But in the show, they decided, nah, who wants a zombie Hulk? He arrives on Earth to warn of Thanos' coming as Banner, before finding the world's been completely overtaken by zombies. He teams up with other survivors to try to find a cure. Later on, Banner sacrifices himself to hold back an army of zombies, transforming into the Hulk to fight them back. But while a normal writer would have used this heroic sacrifice to have Hulk later return as an awesome and unbeatable zombie, the show decided, for God knows what reason, to instead have Hulk become imbued with the power of all 6 Infinity Stones when they were destroyed, turning him into a godlike entity who anchors those escaped energies from being harnessed by anyone or from breaking out of him to destroy all of reality. And later he must face an army of mind-controlled zombies to stop their leader from taking that power. This is all just a bunch of made-up nonsensical shit. This is a frickin' Marvel zombie show, man. Is it crazy to have wanted to see zombie versions of Marvel characters? Yeah, and Infinity Hulk is pretty badass, yeah, but you guys had a whole what-if show to explore crap like that. It's not my fault you wasted 3 seasons making up crappy-ass OCs and doing stories about what if something boring and stupid happened to random side characters instead of the main ones we care about. I don't know about you guys, but I'm here for zombies, and a zombie Hulk would have been a huge selling point. Now, no Shang-Chi zombie, no Scott Lang one, who gives a shit? Not only is Hulk one of the main characters in the original comics, but he's one of the main heroes in the MCU. You pop a zombie Hulk in your promo art, I guarantee you're gonna triple your viewers. So I have no idea what the hell the people making these things are thinking, man, and even less idea what the people paying them are thinking. Anyways, whatever. Next up to 23 with U.S. Agent. We see U.S. Agent in the comics as one of the many heroes who show up to Nick Fury's resistance. We don't see what happens to him, but he was likely killed off by zombies soon after, as things go south for the resistance real fast. And within 24 hours, nearly all life on Earth is dead, and we never see him as a zombie. In the show, he's also not a zombie, but instead of serving under Fury to try to save lives, he's seen serving as Zemo's right-hand man to save his own life. While the comic version remains a hero, even self-righteously demanding to know why a villain like Magneto is helping the Resistance, the show version is happily willing to let Zemo sacrifice innocent lives to zombie Atlanteans so they can have safe passage through the oceans. But soon after, he's killed by those same Atlantean zombies, so whatever, who gives a shit? At 22, we move up to Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the most interesting character in the Marvel Zombies comics. He is bitten while trying to stop the Avengers from attacking people at the beginning of the outbreak. Once he realizes how bad things are getting, he swings to Mary Jane and Aunt May to try and get them out of this chaos of the city. Tragically, he transforms into a zombie nearly as soon as he arrives, and the hunger forces him to violently consume both of them. Ugh. Now, in the show, the zombies are just mindless creatures, but in the comics, they retain their minds and personalities. And while many of the other zombies acclimate to their new reality, consuming flesh without focusing too much on the horrors of it, Spider-Man becomes consumed with torturous guilt every time he feeds, and the cravings subside, specifically due to devouring both his lover and aunt, the two people most important to him in the entire world. Though he does show small bits of glee when he tracks down J. Jonah Jameson soon after. Though he follows the other zombies around, he doesn't really seem to get along with them all that well, specifically ones who take too well to their new roles like Hank Pym and Wolverine, and does not take part in the project to build a device to take down Galactus despite his immense intelligence. Though he does form a bit of a camaraderie with the zombified Luke Cage, who is willing to carry him around on his back when Spidey's leg breaks off. After they steal the power cosmic and consume most of the universe, Spider-Man is one of the first zombies to start realizing that his hunger is subsiding, and upon returning to Earth and finding survivors, is the first to turn on the other zombies to save what little is left of humanity. And much later on, when you wade through all the other Marvel zombie shit that was published after the initial 2 comics, we see him in another universe having fallen to eating flesh again, but spending his time trying to create a way to permanently destroy the zombie virus, which he eventually succeeds at, saving the multiverse from the zombie plague and happily dying in the process. Awful comics at the end there, but a good end to this character, surprisingly. In the original What If Zombies episode, Spider-Man is one of the few survivors of the zombie outbreak trying to search for a cure with others. They are unsuccessful, and eventually he escapes to Carmitage for years before returning to help fight the zombie hordes attempting to steal the Infinity Stone's energy from the Hulk. And though he's about to be eaten, we never actually see him die. So, trying to find a cure, having everyone he loves be dead, and being one of the main characters are about the only similarities. Like Hulk, they decided they didn't want a zombie version of one of their most popular and recognizable characters to advertise this thing. And while the comic version explains that he keeps his mask on because he could not bear to see the monsters become underneath, in the show, like the movies, he doesn't bother to wear the mask that often. And weirdly, though the MCU version isn't explicitly stated to have an Uncle Ben, in the show, he does explicitly reference his uncle, weirdly making him a better adaptation of Spider-Man in this show in that way than in the entire MCU. Up to 21, we've got Thor. In the comics, Thor is one of the last holdouts of Nick Fury's resistance before everything turns to shit, and he and the others are all eaten or bitten. Just before being overrun by zombies, Thor destroys an inter-universal portal that had been built for survivors to escape the universe, sacrificing his own life in order to contain the zombie outbreak to this universe. And while Thor was wielding Millar against zombies for quite a long time in the comic before that, as soon as he's turned into a zombie, we see that he is no longer worthy of lifting it, and instead he makes a makeshift hammer out of some debris to use instead. We see that as a zombie, he's likely much weaker than normal, as an arrow is able to pierce his neck. So yeah, we all like to mock the show for having an arrow pierce through Carol, but there is precedent here, so... Thor fights Magneto and travels around with the other main zombies, also helping to take down the Silver Surfer. While a few of the zombies get to eat some of the Surfer and gain his power cosmic, Thor is not one of them, and when angrily attacking them, he is disintegrated by their new powers and killed alongside many others. In the show, since the zombie outbreak is happening during the events of Infinity War, Thor arrives to kill Thanos after forging Stormbreaker, but is quickly defeated. Which really makes no sense to me, since he was able to face against an alive Thanos for a bit, but a mindless zombie one is too tough, eh? We later see that he's been scarred and spent the last 5 years sulking in a chair at his loss, surrounded by what's left of Asgard's populace, hidden away with the rest of the world. When Shang-Chi and the other survivors reach this place looking for a spaceship, Thor initially does not even take notice, until all the Asgardians are kind of stupidly turned into zombies by being tricked into eating zombie flesh, and Thor finally goes into action to sacrifice himself to save the humans as they reach the spaceship and escape. Unlike Hulk and Spider-Man, Thor is infected by the zombies, and later on we see the zombie version of him during the battle to take the Infinity Power from the Hulk. So, becomes a zombie, puts him a bit higher, but like the others, these zombies are seemingly mindless monsters. And while the comic version heroically sacrificed himself to save the entire multiverse, the show version sits around after getting scarred by Thanos, even though his forces won that battle, and does nothing for 5 years, while any surviving friends and allies out there are just horribly eaten and killed. At 20, we come to Hank Pym. Now in the comics, zombie Hank Pym is one of the main characters, taking on even a bit of a leadership role in the later parts of that comic. Of all the Avengers, he acclimates a little too quickly to the zombie outbreak, some dark inner aspects of his personality clearly coming out. We learn that he was bitten and infected by his wife Janet. Before he turns, he sees the other Avengers losing their minds when the hunger overtakes them, and has the foresight to trick an ally into being trapped so that he will be able to slowly feed off of him over time to keep his mind as clear as possible. He justifies this to himself that he will use that clarity to find a cure, and though he does try to resist the urge to feed and find a way to stop this all, eventually that loses its importance and the need becomes overwhelming. Once most of the world has been eaten, Zombie Wasp follows him and sees him hoarding food from the others. But when she demands some, they get into a fight and he bites her head off in a rage and leaves her for dead. Alongside the other zombies, he takes down and eats Silver Surfer, gaining a portion of his power cosmic and killing most of the zombies who didn't gain it. He then uses his mind to help build a machine to take down Galactus, and after eating Galactus and gaining greater cosmic powers, he and the other zombies go into the stars and consume nearly all life in the universe within 40 years, eventually returning to Earth to find and fix the inter-universal portal machine so they can have a new universe to consume. When he finds survivors on Earth, he begins coming up with plans to breed them as a constant source of food, before Spider-Man opposes him. They fight, but just as Hank is about to eat a survivor, he realizes that his hunger is gone and stops himself. Later, alongside the others, he is banished to another universe, and for reasons that are never explained, just returns to eating people before he is eventually just lazily killed off. Now, though Hank Pym is, or at least was before losers started writing things, one of the main characters of the Marvel Universe in comics, in the movies he's more of a side character, with Scott Lang taking on the mantle of Ant-Man. The show version is unwittingly responsible for unleashing the zombie infestation, as Janet had contracted it within the Quantum Zone. When he rescued her, she bit him, and they both spread it back to the rest of the world, infecting Scott Lang and others. In the comics, he is only in his Giant Man persona, able to grow to immense heights and does not have his helmet, while in the show he maintains his ability to shrink and seemingly to control ants as well. We see him at the battle against Infinity Hulk at the end, where his mini-body is precisely chopped in half by Blade. Unlike Spidey and the Hulk, I can't really be that upset about this one since MCU Hank Pym is not a major character. But like Shang-Chi, it's interesting to see which characters the MCU decided to make important and which ones it didn't, reflected in the choices in this spin-off show. And now at 19, we got Winter Soldier. We don't know how he got infected, but we see Winter Soldier attempting to eat Dazzler in the Army of Darkness vs. Marvel Zombies crossover comic, before Ash Williams blows him away with his boomstick, saving her. I see people who claim whether this crossover is or isn't canon, but it's actually quite good and makes an attempt to fit within the established Marvel Zombies continuity better than later volumes even bother to, so I count it. In the show, Winter Soldier is one of the survivors trying to find a cure. We see him fight a zombified Captain America and claim the shield. He tries to hold back a zombified Scarlet Witch, though I have no idea why, since all he has is a gun and a shield, and she easily uses her magic to toss him miles away. We don't see him again, but since Zombie Cap has the shield again when we next see him, I'll guess things didn't go too well. Another interesting one, since in the MCU, Winter Soldier is one of their major heroes, while at the time his return as Winter Soldier had only happened a relatively short time before. At 18 now, we've got Carol Danvers. In the comics, Carol was in her, much cooler, Ms. Marvel identity, as she was in the 616 universe at the time. She was a member of the Avengers and was one of the first ones on the scene at the outbreak of the zombie virus and was among the first infected. Her and the other zombified Avengers began slaughtering and consuming people throughout the city. When their minds cleared, they went back to Avengers Mansion to try to formulate a plan to stop the virus, but they wound up being consumed by hunger again and ate Jarvis. Soon after, they seemed to give in to their urges and started slaughtering and eating people across the world en masse, with Carol infecting Nova. We see her among zombies fighting against Magneto in the Ultimate Fantastic Four. She may or may not have been killed when Magneto unleashed his powers against the zombies to save the Four and sacrifice himself to destroy the portal they'd made between universes, but if so, we don't see it. And if she didn't die here, she likely did when the zombies with the power cosmic killed many of the others. In the show, Carol is also a zombie, though she is not a member of the Avengers, and how she got infected or why she's on Earth we do not see. She's under her modern Captain Marvel identity, and we see her fighting against a messed up but non-zombified Icarus, though we don't learn the details of why. Like all other zombies, she is more of a mindless creature who cannot talk, but unlike the others so far, she's just a normal zombie who's not even supposed to be a main character in the comics anyways, and isn't changed into some kind of weird OC nonsense, earning her a place relatively higher. At 17, we come to Wong. In the comics, we see Wong being eaten by a zombified Dr. Druid in the Sanctum Sanctorum. We do not see him become a zombie due to the fact that he's basically nearly fully devoured. In the movies, we see Wong as a zombie alongside Iron Man and Doctor Strange when Bruce Banner arrives back at Earth to warn about Thanos. He is soon after killed as well. So, both versions do little more than die, though one does as a zombie while the other does so as a human. At 16, we come to Black Widow. In the comics, Black Widow is a member of the Avengers, and one of the first heroes who are infected by the zombie virus when the Avengers arrive to investigate. In the show, Black Widow is also a member of the Avengers who is attacked alongside the others when they arrive to face off against the hordes of zombies. Apparently with no plan whatsoever, since they just walk off the Quinjet and are killed. In the show, we never see her again, letting us assume she was completely consumed, while in the comic, we see her turn into a zombie. We see her for a few more times in the background with other zombies, but eventually stop seeing her, letting us assume she was likely killed when some of the zombies gained the power cosmic. Both versions rolls on the Avengers while arriving to deal with the outbreak, as well as quickly dying off screen, are the similarities. Though I have to ask for the show, again, why wouldn't you use a zombie Black Widow for ads as well? Especially when Yelena and the rest of her surrogate family are such a big part of the show. It's friggin' weird. At 15, we reach Wasp. In the comics, Janet Van Dyne is one of the first Avengers on the scene to investigate the outbreak of the zombie virus, and is one of the first infected. She goes on to infect the others before later having her head bit off by Hank Pym while trying to make him share his secret food stash with her. Janet's head is discovered later on, and after 40 years, we see her cured of her hunger inside a jar on a robotic body, as she lives with a small group of human survivors. Though some find her being allowed to continue, quote, living as controversial. As said before, this is where the Scott Lang head in a jar thing came from. Later, she is forced to transport to another universe and is killed off screen trying to stop the zombie outbreak that's occurred there, which pisses me the hell off. In the show, Janet is trapped in the quantum zone and becomes infected with a quantum virus that leads to her zombification. When Hank Pym rescues her, she infects him, and together they bring the virus to the rest of the world. Years later, we see her as part of the army trying to attack the Infinity Stone-empowered Hulk, where she is killed. Both versions are zombies. Both versions are among the first infected who spread the virus to the rest of the world. Both versions retain their abilities to fly and shrink. Besides the obvious differences between comic and movie Janet and the differences between how the zombie virus affects people, that's a lot more in common than we've seen so far. And one of the major differences between the comics and shows is that in the comics, it's not Janet who begins the outbreak on Earth, but an other universe Sentry who breaks through into this universe by sheer force of will due to his overwhelming hunger. With it being said that this virus has spread across hundreds of universes before reaching this one. But since Sentry did not exist in the MCU, they chose to go a different route. But even in the comics, they ruined that, with an incredibly convoluted retcon of where the initial zombie Sentry came from that I freaking hate, and will not go into here since it's not relevant. Up to 14 now with Iron Man. In the show, Iron Man is one of the Avengers who initially responds to the zombie outbreak in San Francisco. Alongside the other Avengers, he is almost immediately overrun and infected, and later we see him alongside other zombies when Banner returns to Earth to warn of Thanos. And he is almost immediately decapitated by one of Wasp's blasts. I question very much why the Avengers just walked out into a crowd of zombies with no plan, how they were overrun, when we've seen them fight way crazier shit than this, how zombie Iron Man was bitten by regular human zombies while in full armor, and if Wasp was able to solo multiple multiple zombie Avengers why the actual Avengers lost to a crowd of regular human zombies, but, none of that really matters here. In the comics, Iron Man is an entire character who's actually taken seriously. He's one of the many Fury calls to form a resistance against the zombie outbreak. Tony was one of the scientists working on ways to survive the zombie apocalypse, and he built the Inter-Universal Transporter as a means for survivors to escape. He was bitten before he could complete it and joined the other zombies in hunting down humans to feed on afterwards. Later, we see that he and Steve are each leading a group of zombies to find survivors after most of the world has been consumed. He is initially upset when he learns that Steve and the others ate Magneto without sharing and then lied about it, but then says, "I would have done the same thing, buddy," showing us that despite their zombification, they still share the bond they shared in life. He's one of the zombies who are able to eat some of the Silver Surfer, despite having his lower half blown off in the process, and gains a bit of the power cosmic, which he uses to continue flying despite the lack of legs. Alongside Pym, he helps build the device to take down Galactus, and when they feed on him, they gain even greater power they use to travel space and consume most of the universe. As he did in life, he takes on a leadership role among the zombies, and uses an immense intelligence to aid them when he's not completely mindlessly overcome by hunger. Upon consuming most of the universe, he and the other zombies return to Earth to find and repair his teleportation machine so they can reach a new universe to consume. While Spider-Man comes to his senses and sides with the humans they find, Tony fights with the other zombies, though he eventually realizes his hunger has subsided and comes to his senses as well. And while trying to fight Hulk with the others to save the humans, he is crushed by the Hulk and killed. I can't be too hard on how he's wasted in the show, because when they made What If Zombies, they didn't know that there was going to be a spin-off where you'd want an Iron Man zombie around. So they just killed him off. But I can complain that they chose to make the zombies mindless monsters instead of characters, so we don't get to see how insanely dangerous and deadly the MCU Iron Man would have been as a zombie who could think and reason. Now up to 13 we have Scarlet Witch. In the comics, Scarlet Witch was a member of the Avengers. When the zombie Avengers returned to Avengers Mansion, they sent out an all-Avengers SOS, leading many heroes to rush there and become infected. Scarlet Witch was among them, but she was able to escape, feeling guilt for running away. We see her later among the assembled heroes Nick Fury called together, though later she seeks out Ash Williams, who she had heard earlier warn of a coming apocalypse, and teams up with him to try to help end it. They travel together to Latveria in search of this universe's version of the Necronomicon. A horde of zombies was attacking Doom's castle to get at the survivors he was holding inside, and eventually Wanda was bitten and infected by a zombified Punisher who Ash had left to die earlier. In a later volume of Marvel Zombies, we see a zombified Scarlet Witch for one panel manipulating a half-destroyed Vision into blocking radio signals of the Earth-616 Machine Man, who'd made his way into this universe. Who she was later killed by because, according to that crappy-ass comic, though every hero in the entire world fell to this zombie horde, apparently Machine Man alone was enough to fight all of them off single-handedly, even though we'd seen the zombie universe version of him be brutally killed by friggin' Power Pack zombies already, so, yeah. Anyways, in the show, Scarlet Witch was infected at some point. While Vision was somehow able to use the Mind Stone to cure Scott Lang, he says Scarlet Witch is too powerful to cure, and has instead been luring humans to the base they're staying at to feed them to her and contain her power. When other heroes arrive and chastise Vision, he feels bad, so he stops and she breaks free, killing that one made-up dude from Ant-Man as well as seemingly Bucky. 5 years later, she has somehow, that is not explained, regained her sentience and is able to control and lead seemingly infinite numbers of zombies with her magics. This is all made up nonsense, but unlike pretty much all the other zombies, she frickin' talks and thinks as a Marvel friggin' zombie is supposed to. And due to her also inadvertently manipulating Vision, this makes her closer to the source material this show is ripping off than just about everyone else so far. Wowee! At this point, I'll take what I can get. But next at 12, we come to Red Guardian. In the show, Red Guardian is hiding in a S.H.I.E.L.D. base alongside others. They're all forced out by Scarlet Witch's zombie army and travel across the world before Red Guardian is affected and becomes a zombie. In the comics, Red Guardian shows up for one panel. When Quicksilver attempts to save his sister from the zombie outbreak, it turns out he'd actually grabbed Mystique in disguise, who infected him and created a zombie speedster who is able to infect people across the entire globe at super speed. We see glimpses of heroes and villains in many other countries, including Russia, where we see an infected Red Guardian standing there looking all zombified. So, though his role in the show is bigger before zombification than it was in the comics, he's just a basic zombie who doesn't have any speaking lines or take a big part of the plot once he turns into a zombie, which means so far, he gets some of the highest praise as an adaptation. Good job. At 11, we move up to Doctor Strange. Surprisingly, Doctor Strange doesn't have a very big role in the comics, which matches his surprisingly small role in the shows as well. We see him as one of the many heroes Fury calls into his resistance against zombies in the comics, and he is one of the last ones alive alongside Thor before they sacrifice themselves to destroy the portal to another universe and are infected. We see him among the many zombies trying to catch the Ultimate Fantastic Four later on, but when Magneto crushes many of the zombies with hundreds of cars to help him escape, Strange is among those crushed. And he does not follow the others after this, presumably having been too injured, but he is later recovered by a zombified Kingpin, now severely disabled and only able to perform a couple of spells. In the show, Doctor Strange is one of the initial zombies Banner runs into when trying to warn Earth about Thanos. His cloak of levitation seems to have abandoned him and aids Banner instead. And when other survivors arrive to help, Strange is consumed by an army of ants led by Hope. So he doesn't do much, is completely wasted, and is seemingly killed off by something that should not have been able to kill him in both universes very, very early in the story. Finally, a good adaptation? And now we reach the top 10 most adapted characters, starting with Thanos. We don't see how Thanos is infected in the comics. We see Thanos as a zombie alongside the others after the 40 years it took to consume nearly all life in the universe. He was turned by one of them at some point, and alongside a couple other cosmic characters has been traveling with them. He chastises Hulk for how much he eats, and blames him for how quickly they devoured the universe, to which Hulk says he's had enough of Thanos' complaining, and promptly smashes his head in, saying that now Hulk can eat Thanos' share and things will be fair. Likely fed up with Thanos whining at the cosmically empowered heroes all those decades. In the show, we see a zombified Thanos wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, who'd come to Earth to find the last stone and assumedly been infected. He is seemingly able to control the dead with the gauntlet, and has the cognizance to shoot blasts of energy out from it. And, like the comics, he is killed very quickly soon after appearing, this time by a ragtag group of heroes who stop him from getting the final stone and doing whatever a nearly mindless zombie Thanos would have done with a full Infinity Gauntlet. So like Doctor Strange, completely wasted and killed off too quickly in both universes. Man, we're really getting somewhere now, huh guys? Up to 9 with Vision. In the comics, Vision is a member of the Avengers, but is not part of the team that responds to Sentry's crash. We see him later as part of Fury's resistance. Much later, we see him in the far background as a tiny little speck while the other zombies are attacking the Ultimate Fantastic Four. We do not know if he was somehow reprogrammed, able to be infected despite being a machine, just said F it and decided if you can't beat him, join him, or maybe was trying to fly down to help the FF escape. Much later again, we see that his half-destroyed body is being manipulated by Scarlet Witch, and he is seemingly not zombified, implying that he may have just joined the zombies out of love for it, despite her zombification. In the show, he's also not affected by the zombies, and starts working alongside them out of a desperation to help cure Scarlet Witch of her zombification, as he was able to do with Scott Lang's head. He sees the error of his ways and stops, allowing Wong to escape, and sacrifices his life to rip the Mind Stone straight out of his own head to give to the survivors to attempt to use to cure the outbreak across the globe. Though this goes nowhere, so he died for nothing like an idiot. Both versions cannot be infected, and both versions work alongside the zombies for Wanda's sake. So there you go. Now update, we have Hawkeye. In both the comic and show, Hawkeye is one of the initial Avengers that went to investigate the outbreak. In both versions, he was almost immediately infected and became a zombie. Both versions work alongside other zombies to hunt down survivors to eat. Both versions fire off arrows that are eventually used against other zombies, and both are eventually decapitated. In the show, this is from magical energy while facing off against Infinity Hulk alongside an army of zombies. In the comics, it is from Magneto as an army of zombies tries to capture him. In the show, this kills him, while in the comics his head lays under some rubble for over 40 years alone, the isolation driving him insane. He is eventually recovered by the human survivors on Earth and put into one of Wasp's old robot bodies. When the Hulk attacks the humans, Hawkeye tries to stop him, but is killed. So, he's among the first Avengers infected, hunts down survivors among others, has his costume more or less remained undamaged until his decapitation, and dies while facing the Hulk. If you ignore every actually important part of the comics, we got a pretty solid adaptation here. Nice. But up to 7 we've got Colonel America. One of the major characters who show us that this was a different universe than the main 616 version was Steve Rogers. Not only does he go by Colonel America instead of Captain in this universe, but he served as president for one term at some point in the past. Both show and comic versions of Steve Rogers are one of the first infected while investigating the outbreak. Go on to hunt down survivors among other zombified heroes and are eventually severely injured by their own shields. In the comics, the top of his head is cut off by Magneto, exposing his open brains, though he is still able to function. In the show, he is cut in half by Bucky. Both eventually recover their shields and continue hunting down survivors alongside others. In the show, as part of Okoye's army. In the comics, as a team with Iron Man and others. And later on, both versions are killed in battle. In the comics, it is while fighting the zombified supervillains who are trying to claim Galactus for themselves to feed on, when Red Skull rips Captain America's brains out and dies happily afterwards, claiming all of this was worthwhile to finally be able to kill Steve. In the show, he is killed while fighting Red Guardian, who slips and crushes Cap by falling on him. So I guess both are killed by red something characters with ties to nations that have historically been enemies to America or something, though this is likely a coincidence. Moderately similar arc with absolutely every detail changed and absolutely no similarities in his personality or anything else that matters. Man, we're on a roll in this top 10. Up to 6 we reach Namor. In the comics, Namor is just a random zombie we see in the background a few times. We don't know how or when he was infected, but we see him both trying to attack the Ultimate Fantastic Four, Magneto, and the Silver Surfer, the last of whom kills him. In the show, we also don't know any of the details of how or when Namor turned. We just see him attacking Zemo's raft as it travels through the oceans. Both versions are basically just random superpowered zombies who attack our heroes and aren't fleshed out that much in either version. The major differences being that in the show, he's being guided by Scarlet Witch's magics, as most of the zombies are. Well, in the comics, that just isn't a thing. So, not really much to work with here, but that's the kind of thing that gets you this high on a list like this, apparently. And now entering what we'll painfully call the top 5 most well-adapted Marvel Zombies characters, starting with Falcon. In the comics, Falcon was one of the heroes called to Nick Fury's resistance, but he became infected at some point very soon after and is seen as part of the zombie hordes. He is later seemingly killed by the Silver Surfer, but due to reasons that make sense and are not just a lazy continuity error from a writer who did not care about the previous comics continuity, we see him and also Angel, who had already died alongside him, attacking the Earth 616 Machine Man and Jocasta when they travel to the zombie universe, with Jocasta killing him soon after. In the show, Falcon is among the random zombies who attack a group of survivors, and he is soon after killed by Okoye. So, turns into a zombie off screen, attacks survivors, and is killed. Top 5, everyone! What the hell are we doing here? Now up to 4, we have Blade. With all the heroes we see in the original Marvel Zombies across its many series and spin-offs, surprisingly Blade is not one of them. However, he does get a prominent role in a later series, Marvel Zombies Resurrections, which is about a zombie outbreak with no relation whatsoever to the one seen in the original series. In this universe, a dead Galactus is found at the edge of the galaxy, and the heroes who go to investigate find themselves infected with a zombie-like virus linked to the Brood. Years later, we see Peter Parker and the Richards children traveling and trying to survive. And out of absolutely nowhere, Blade just appears, offering to help him travel to the source of the zombie outbreak to try to find a cure. Blade doesn't actually believe that a cure is possible, but he says as a slayer of the undead, the zombie apocalypse has been friggin' awesome for him, and is eager to go where the highest concentration of zombies will be. In the show, Blade also pops out of nowhere, but this time to save Kamala Khan, and offers to help her travel towards the location of a ship that she believes she can use to help either save survivors or find a cure. But instead of just doing it for the lulz like the comic, this version of Blade has at some point we never see been chosen as the next avatar of Khonshu and become a Moon Knight/Blade amalgamation, and is leading her on Khonshu's orders. Both versions are very skilled at fighting the dead, using their honed abilities from years of hunting vampires. And as a side note, this isn't a placement on the ranking, but for those of you curious, as for Mark Spector himself, he doesn't appear in the show, and whether or not he ever operated as Moon Knight or even exists in this universe is unknown. But in the comics, he's seen a number of times alongside other zombies trying to find survivors to eat before eventually being killed by Silver Surfer. Now entering the top 3 with The Watcher. Uatu is never seen within the original Marvel Zombies universe, but is seen in an alternate universe Spider-Man and others are sent to later on. He notices the zombies arriving on his Earth and is soon after seemingly eaten by Hank Pym, who is teleported from his own universe into the Watcher's base on the moon. Later he returns and claims that he could not be killed, even though we literally watched him get eaten, claiming that because millennia ago he and his brethren traded their corporeal bodies for forms of pure energy, he cannot be killed or turned by the zombie virus, which I gotta call BS on, since we've already watched these zombies kill or infect Thor, Enchantress, Loki, Hercules, Ego the Living Planet, the Juggernaut, Worldbreaker Hulk, Ghost Rider, the Sentry, Fire Lord, the Silver Surfer, friggin' Galactus, and the goddamn Phoenix Force. Watch is incredibly powerful, but come on, man, friggin' nonsense. Anyways, he returns later in the story and, takes the zombified Sentry from this new universe and unleashes him back in time to that original universe to turn this whole story into a frickin' bootstrap paradox, in an attempt to contain the virus in an infinite cycle. I hate this ending. The zombie Sentry breaking through from his dead universe to get to another one, with hundreds of previous universes having fallen to this thing, was a much cooler origin, and was what the original, much better authors intended before what's-his-name hijacked the franchise and turned it into a Machine Man, Howard the Duck nonsense thing, but whatever. I think I'm getting distracted. What was I? Oh yeah, in the show, Uatu is portrayed as not being a separate being in different universes as he is in the comics, but an extra-dimensional being who watches over all universes. God damn it. We see him watching over this zombie universe, saying incredibly Watcher-like things like, Janet Van Dyne contracted a quantum virus, so when she finally reunited with her husband after 30 long years, oof, that happened. as she bites him. Because in the modern MCU, every character needs to be the funny character, even the frickin' Watcher. And we see him later in the spin-off show, Watching from Beyond as well. So, neither become zombies, and both watch as the zombie plague overtakes the universe. The main difference is that the comic one breaks his oath to never interfere in order to help safeguard the rest of the multiverse from this unceasing zombie plague, while the show one stays true to his oath not to interfere and lets the entire universe die horribly, only willing to break his oath in later What If episodes for incredibly important things, like saving a random Riri Williams from a random universe because he apparently really felt for her struggle, you know? And going to see how his bestest friend, good old Captain Carter, is doing. Boy, I love what What If did to one of my favorite characters. Alright, and now the second most well-adapted character in Marvel Zombies is Kate Bishop. In the show, Kate Bishop is one of the few human survivors left 5 years after the outbreak, working alongside others to stay alive in the zombie wastes. She is eventually killed by a zombified Captain Marvel after hilariously shooting a confetti arrow into her. In the comics, Kate was an incredibly new and still forming character when the original Marvel Zombies comics came out, so she's not a part of it. Though we do see her Young Avengers teammate Hulkling at one point, so it's possible she existed and had just been completely eaten. In the much later, completely unrelated, and absolute waste of time one-shot comic called Marvel Zombie that was published years later, we do see a Kate Bishop, though, in a zombie universe more akin to just a generic one, as a member of a group of survivors calling themselves the Defenders. Like the show, she travels with others and uses her arrow skills to survive. But we see her friends all horribly eaten by zombies, with her likely sharing the same fate. All because their supposed ally Moon Girl last second decided to abandon the plan they all agreed to, including her, in order to let them all die horribly so that she can save Simon Garth the zombie on a random sudden whim she has. So though not very similar, both versions of Kate are parts of a survivor group, shoot zombies, and die without becoming zombies. Which is enough to earn her second place, baby. Yeah! Alright, and now, finally, the number one most well-adapted character from the Marvel Zombies comics into the MCU is Black Panther. In the comics, Black Panther is among the heroes who are able to survive the initial zombie outbreak. We first see him escaping alongside Hank Pym, coming up with plans on how best to deal with what's happening to the world. Panther notices Pym has been bitten and realizes that something's amiss, to which Pym increases in size and knocks T'Challa out, revealing that he is planning to kidnap him to slowly feed on so that he can keep his mind when the hunger takes him, unlike the other zombies. Later, we see T'Challa sedated in Pym's makeshift lab with his arm and leg surgically removed so Pym can eat him without infecting him to keep him alive longer. When Pym gets distracted trying to take down the Silver Surfer and Galactus, the sedatives wear off and Black Panther is able to escape the lab using a makeshift walking stick. He finds Wasp's head and carries it with him, seeing her as a suffering ally who is no longer a threat without her body, despite her constantly asking him to cut a piece of himself off to feed her. He finds some followers of Magneto who had been surviving up on Asteroid M and are down searching for him. T'Challa is brought into space with them, surviving as the cosmically empowered zombies leave the planet for more food. With T'Challa and the others returning to Earth years later after scans revealed virtually no evidence of any zombies remaining on the Earth, and now having cybernetic limbs that were built for him by Forge. In the show, Black Panther was among the Avengers who investigated the initial outbreak, and while Captain America and Iron Man were somehow completely overrun by the zombified humans, Black Panther got away. Instead of being tricked and captured by Hank Pym, in the show he was tricked and captured by the Vision, in order to also sedate him and cut pieces of him off and feed to Scarlet Witch without infecting him. And we see him on a surgical table with his leg removed. An honest-to-God reference to the goddamn comics. I can't believe it, man. Showing us that these bastards did look through him and just decided to scrap everything that made them unique and cool except for this one part in that jar for some reason. He's found and saved by other survivors and goes with them to Wakanda to attempt to cure the virus. Despite losing limbs, both versions maintain their confidence and dignity and show themselves to be incredibly capable fighters, with the comic version able to fight back multiple human attackers despite just waking up, crawling out of a medical nightmare, and propping himself up with a fucking stick, while holding a zombie head in the other hand. In the show, he is one of the heroes who battles against the zombified Thanos and is able to, somehow, outfight Thor, Spider-Man, and others despite also missing a leg, going on to sacrifice himself to defeat Thanos. Though he's quickly killed off in the show, and in the comics he goes on to be a major character with all kinds of crazy shit happening to the guy as you go on. Though as it is with pretty much everything in this universe, things don't go so well in the long run. So, he's one of the very few who survived the zombie apocalypse, has limbs surgically removed to feed to zombified Avengers, escapes captivity, and saves what's left of humanity, with both versions then being tossed to the side by later writers with no respect for the source material. All in all, compared to what we've just gone through, a surprisingly moderately okay adaptation for this coveted #1 spot. And there we go. The worst to best adapted characters in Marvel Zombies. This was a very different list than we usually see, since they just took the title and ignored just about everything else in this series, making the story, characters, and rules of these universes incredibly different. Though with just enough little shoutouts to let us know that they did at least glance at the comics, but then just decided to ignore everything, which somehow just makes it more frustrating for fans who like the source material and would have loved to have a version of it adapted. Tell me below, did you like doing a list like this where the writers were just making shit up? Or did you find it incredibly useless and frustrating the entire time and you want to jump through your screen and beat the ever-loving shit out of me right now? There are some other adaptations of a similar vein we could do this with if you'd like, or we can lock this list in a dark vault, pretend it never happened, and never speak of this again. It's your choice. As always, let me know which movie, show, video game, or whatever you would like to see an adaptation ranking for in the future. I got a whole list of your suggestions, but I'm always happy to put more on them. With this list being one that was actually suggested by somebody as well. So blame that guy. Wasn't my idea. Anyways, though, now that I think about it, I absolutely hate what Fred Van Lent did to the Marvel Zombies comics just about as much as I hate what Zeb Wells did to the show version. So I guess overall, maybe the show was a really good adaptation in some ways. If for nothing else, the fact that they both infuriated me to no goddamn end. Well, whatever. Life is meaningless and we'll all rot in the ground one day anyway. See you next time, partners. Yee-haw!